Hey there, it's Marley Major. Before we dig in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell because you definitely don't want to miss another glorious disaster here on Every Day's a Train Wreck. Because missing an episode, now that would be a train wreck. Let's get to it. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to 2026. This is the first episode of the year, and I will tell you there's been a lot of back and forth about this episode. So I normally have so many podcasts in the queue, but with the holidays and everything else, and I was traveling to Asia to do this Future of AI talk, which was amazing. But that plus life, plus 3 kids, the whole thing, I just got behind. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, we don't have a podcast for the first podcast of the year, which is horrible for somebody like me because I love the podcast, but I also love the beginning of the year because you get to kind of just reset and reorganize. And to me, it's just kind of like cleaning out the closet. So what I wanted to do this year is start it off, and I'm going to call it like meeting you where you are. Or maybe I'm just going to say I'm meeting myself where I am. Because I think in the days of Instagram and social media, we all know this, right? Everybody presents the most perfect version of themselves. And when we see that and we're not in that space, what happens? We just feel like we're the only one that ever has anything go wrong. Okay. Well, I learned a long time ago that no matter what, I'm never the only one that's going through something. So what I decided to do today is just have a real, raw, honest conversation with you and let you know where I am in the hopes that maybe it is going to help you and help you set your course. So today's podcast is not about Secret Santas. It's not about how to throw the best event. I think all those things are important. That's obviously like what I built my career on, basically making people happy, right? That's kind of my goal, is to take people who want to entertain and want to see their friends and want to do something really fun. And they hire me to bring it to life. But sometimes as business owners, as moms, wives, etc., you're just not feeling it, right? You're just totally overwhelmed. And January is a time when most of us have probably had a little too much alcohol, a little too much food, a little too much just everything. I was binge watching I think it's on Netflix, Victoria, and about Queen Victoria. And I like those kind of period pieces. And I don't know if it was in Victoria or something else, but they talk about the gout, right? And I laugh because I think like, boy, there are definitely times I would have the gout. And gout being kind of like, where your ankles swell up and all this stuff. And it's basically from overindulging. And ironically, as I'm taping this, the podcast for you guys get released every Wednesday, but I'm taping this way late and it's actually Tuesday, January 6th. Well, I titled this podcast like from my notes, right? Like as I was prepping everything. I was like, oh, like, let's just talk about the dumpster fire of 2025, right? Like, let's get real. Who cares? It's just us. Let's chat. And then I realized, wow, I am taping this podcast on the dumpster fire day of 2025, exactly a year ago. Now, at this time a year ago, I hadn't evacuated yet. There were fires around. I could smell it. Like even in the room I'm in right now, I could smell it. And ironically, now we've had tons and tons of rain. I mean, literally so much rain. I can't even tell you. There's like a river outside of in the hills here by me. And it's like the opposite. It feels like a fire. It's not dry. It's not anything. And yet, if you fast forwarded, a little bit later in the middle of the night tonight, 1 year ago, we would have left in the middle of the night with the dogs and the whole thing. And I got to tell you, I'm alive and safe. So many of my friends lost their homes, and that was heart-wrenching. The thing that's really interesting is I'm sitting here going, wow, it is a year later. And I don't know about you guys, but that whole freaking 2025 felt like a giant dumpster fire. I mean, to me, it felt like it started in Altadena and Pacific Palisades, and maybe it didn't, like, quote, affect our house. But I'm telling you, this whole year has seemed like it's just been on fire. And I thought it was just ironic that I wanted to call it out and let you know. Usually I don't give you guys the behind the scenes when we tape things, or, kind of how the machinations work. But I just thought it was kind of ironic that this is being taped on January 6th. Now, this episode is for anybody who feels overwhelmed, alone, by themselves. I'll just say it, fat, confused, behind, just nothing good. I think sometimes it's like we think of the commercials for January where we're like all at the gym and feeling great. And by the way, have you ever noticed that any of those people in the commercials at the gym, like that they start playing right for January 1st, like they're already skinny and they're already very toned. I'm like, okay, if I were looking like that, I would not be starting my gym membership. But anyway, that's beside the point. So today, this podcast is, I would think of it as a podcast that I would want to listen to or have somebody tape, like with me in mind. And when I was traveling in Asia, so the flights are obviously very long. It's 16 hours, just LA to Hong Kong. And I really got to listen to all kinds of podcasts. I got to catch up on stuff. I have another book that's coming out, ironically called Whatever You Do, Don't Do This. And I'm editing it. And I'm just like not there yet. There's a piece that's missing. I think I figured it out yesterday with my friend Simon T. Bailey. If you haven't listened to that episode that I did with Simon, you've got to listen to it because he's amazing, author of all those brilliance books. And I was telling Simon yesterday, I just called him up and I said, hey, listen, I'm stuck. I'm editing the next book. It's not totally there. All the elements are there. I love it, but there's just something missing. And I said, should I share what's going on with me right now in my life? And which is a risk. I'm not going to get into it too much today on the podcast, but he said, yes, you should absolutely reveal it in the book, like protect the innocent, but tell the story. And it dawned on me that sometimes you're just in the middle of it, right? And right now I'm just in the middle of it. It feels like everything is falling apart. Of course, is it? Not really, right? My kids are safe, my family's safe, but I've got all the stuff. It's the beginning of the year. I feel overwhelmed. As a lot of you know, you've heard me talk about, for years, we've been working on this sheep project, right? This product we've been creating, a suite of products to prevent the spread of wildfires, ironically. And we're going for our seed rounds of financing. And that alone is its own learning curve. I mean, just when I think I put together these most amazing financial models and then you run it by somebody and they go, that's not quite as detailed as I like to see it. And you're like, oh my God, that's like every ounce of brain power I had. So I have that. We all have our businesses, our kids. My daughter went back to school today, grumpy as all hell. If you didn't see that podcast with Coco Serio and her Christmas list, you might want to pay attention to that. But the whole point of me bringing this up is when I went to Asia a couple weeks ago and came back, I had travel time and you're just your brain is just not all there. And so I started listening to some things that would just motivate me because I needed to be very motivated. I was doing this talk on the future of AI and what do you do, talking to 800 of the smartest students in Vietnam that, or around Asia that you'd ever come across. And I put a lot into that talk. And the talk was about how everybody's thinking of AI as, oh my gosh, it's going to take our jobs, et cetera, which, okay, I get the argument. But my whole thing is everybody's thinking about building new companies and apps around efficiency AI. And I said, instead, we should be concentrating on relief AI, right? And that is thinking of people and solving their invisible suffering, because we all have invisible suffering. And then I kind of went into all the details about what it means, how you can identify a target audience who's having invisible suffering. And invisible suffering basically is somebody who is put into a position that they didn't want to be in. They are thrust into it immediately. They have no way out. They have no aptitude, and there are very high consequences if they try to get out. So for example, anybody who's a caregiver, right? It's like all of a sudden one of your family members takes a turn for the worse, or you have to care for an aging parent, or, a spouse or a partner, and you're thrust into this world and you just feel like the world is swimming, right? And I was encouraging these students to focus on creating apps and programs and using AI to solve people's invisible problems, because so many of us, we can look like everything is perfect on the outside, and we can smile and we can do podcasts and we can, do social media and we can go about our business and go to the grocery store. But behind our eyes, there's a certain amount of suffering, right? We all have a family member we're worried about, or somebody who's addicted to drugs or alcohol, or somebody who just broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend and are just really struggling. And so I want this episode, maybe that's you when you're listening to this episode. And so this episode is for you. It's one you could bookmark and come back to. I think it's a great one if you could find somebody who maybe needs it and send it to them, because it's hopefully will be like kind of a big virtual hug. So what I'm going to do today is give you some of my tried and true techniques for when I have plenty to do, which seems like always, and it seems like everything is going wrong, or at the very least, nothing is going right, and that it all feels like an uphill battle, and what I do. So if you are feeling that way, if you're feeling overwhelmed, alone, and maybe you have just first world problems, right? Maybe, yes, you have food to put on your table and you have a bed to sleep in, but let's face it, if you're going through a divorce or you're having a tough time, I don't want to say it doesn't matter. Of course it does, but you don't feel particularly lucky, right? So today is not about productivity necessarily. It's about being sane and finding just a little bit of comfort to go just like an inch further in the journey. And to let you know that even people who seem like they have it all, a lot of times yours truly seems like she has it all, there can be so much going wrong. And as the podcast host of Every Day's a Train Wreck, and it didn't really dawn on me that I have a book, whatever you do, don't do this. I have definitely had my fair share of knocks and issues that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, nor would I want to repeat. And so this is more just like a podcast. It's kind of like a voice memo to a friend. Okay. So bottom line, that was kind of a big lead up, but this year did not kick off for me like champagne and vision boards. Now it was pouring rain. A lot of people find that depressing. I did not find that depressing. It's actually like my favorite thing on the planet, but it definitely feels like a dumpster fire, like on every front. And a lot of you are going through similar things. So one thing I want to just remind you that a lot of my friends have had to remind me lately is that you're not weak, you're not broken, you are just human. And one of the things that I learned is that when we get overwhelmed or tired or frustrated or beaten down, especially by a situation, let's say that's been going on for a while, your brain, or my brain at least, just starts to spin. I have, as you guys who've listened before know, I have bad ADHD, and I call it like flooding, like where my brain just feels like it's just like filling up. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you should, because my visual is like where the water is just like coming up to your eyes. And I want to say this clearly, that I realize that not everybody listening has the education or the resources that I have and the support system that I have. But you're still getting up and you're still being proactive and you're listening to this podcast and you're still trying. And that's huge. Okay. So I want you to think of this podcast as the one small thing. I'm going to give you all kinds of tips and tricks that have helped me in the past, that I go back to time and time and time again when the SH really hits the fan. So I want to be really clear. I'm not suggesting you do all of these things. I'm not suggesting you do any of them right now. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe you're freaking on fire, like in the good on fire way. But if you are having a challenging year or just having a challenge kind of just jumping into the year, I want you to listen to this podcast and just pick one thing that resonates with you. Okay. Now I've put this list into like 4 buckets, right? Of how I try to make myself feel better when it's like my head is in a tornado. So the first thing is that I want you to really like get out of your head. Like we have to just calm our nervous systems down. And one thing I want to reiterate, as if it's not totally obvious, is that I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a therapist. I'm none of those things. However, I am a serial entrepreneur who has built many businesses, failed more times than I can count. And I have a lot of experience with being in the weeds and not knowing how to get out. So first thing is bucket 1 is just, you got to calm your nervous system down. One way to do that and to kind of shock yourself into a different state, and there's a lot of data to support this, is like put on a song, not one of those crying songs, unless you're going to put on a crying song and then put on something right after that's going to make you feel good. But I have a playlist in my phone called Guaranteed Happy. Guaranteed Happy is like a fancy way of saying this is your like 911 emergency list, and play these songs when you are totally desperate. Okay, so my number 1 is Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive. I've got the Flashdance song, like the What a Feelin'. These are songs that you can't help but put on and just literally start to jiggle. Okay, I start to smile. So I can't emphasize it enough. Now, if that feels too extreme and you're like, I am depressed, I am very much considering jumping off a bridge, first of all, call 911, but number 2, I can relate. But there's a great app called binaural brainwaves. And it's basically like it's got all the white noise and brown noise and whatever they are in the alpha, beta, theta levels. And they have all these different, like you can pick focused and alert. Like if you're working on something, you pick concentration, you can pick motivation, you can pick like ease anxiety, etc. So sometimes when I just cannot, I'm just totally paralyzed, I will just put on my binaural brainwaves, pick one of them. You can download the app from wherever you get your apps for your phone. And I just let that start taking the lead and kind of resetting my brain. Another thing is, you can do this while you're doing binaural brainwaves, is like the 4-4-4 breathing, where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. And you do that for at least a few minutes. It's amazing how you think you're doing it and then you realize you stopped and got distracted again. Now, as you can tell, I'm giving you kind of all kinds of bullet points, because when I'm struggling, I'm looking for like a lifeline. And what I want you to, if something resonates with you, okay, listen to it, maybe make a note as you're listening to the podcast, and then go back and, research 4-4-4 breathing, or research binaural brainwaves, or whatever other app does, something similar. Another thing I do is to calm myself down is sometimes I just don't have any noise, which sounds completely opposite. It is opposite to what I just told you guys to do. But something is, I just will go outside barefoot, if you can ground yourself in the grass or even in the dirt, and just sit outside or stand outside if it's freezing where you are. Maybe don't take your shoes off, but just get some fresh air and spend a couple minutes just regrouping. Another thing that I do is I take a really hot bath. And a lot of you guys know this, I hate email. I really wish I loved email. I'm working on that so much. My reframing. I love email. But I have this thing where I will not, if I have emails and stuff that I have to check and I need to handle, I will not get out of the bathtub until I've done my emails. Okay. Now I think my record is a 5-hour bath. Everybody in my family thinks I'm crazy, but I just will not get out. Sometimes that's the only thing I can do. I just have to pound through it. Okay. And there's something I think about a really hot bath. I use a couple pounds, not really, a couple cups of Epsom salt and lavender oil or something. Essential oils are another thing to just kind of calm me down, and just breathe in lavender oil. And you can Google what essential oils really help you calm down. But another thing I do is I love my incense. my daughter is like, why does it smell like this house is burning down? And because I love my incense, I love a candle. And you can combine some of these things, right? You can take a hot bath, but there's something to me about when you take a really hot bath, you're almost forced to relax because you're freaking hot, right? So that's kind of bucket one, is just try to calm yourself. Just get to a baseline point. And at this point, you don't need clarity at this point in the process. If you're really spinning, you don't need clarity. You just need to calm things down. Now, the next bucket is basically about getting back into your body. Like, I do not love exercise in any way, shape, or form. I do it. And sometimes, like, I do my hikes, etc., and I love those. And that really clears my head. But I find that that's what happens after the fact, right? You feel so much better after you do the hike. But what if you're like depressed and right now and you're like, I don't want to go for a hike. I don't want to get out of bed, let alone go for a walk. Well, what I do is I'll sometimes just say to myself, hey, could you just go for a 10-minute walk? You just put your tennis shoes on and go for a 10-minute walk. And then I do, and then I start feeling better, right? Or I put my music on, my Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive, and say, can you just go for a 10-minute walk? And then I'm outside, I'm breathing fresh air, and I just feel so much better. Another thing is caffeine. I love caffeine. I love my cappuccinos. I love my guarana. That's, I think, the ingredient that's in Celsius. But if you need the caffeine to get you to go for a walk, great. Or you need matcha tea or something. But if you are really in a state, which I have been in recently, quite more than I'd like to admit, really be careful of the caffeine, because what I find is it just gets me to that next level of spinning and out of control. Another thing is take a nap or just sleep. Or if you're like, I've slept, I have no motivation, sometimes I will just sit and listen to my binaural brain waves. I'm not exactly sleeping, but I'm really not doing anything. And what I want to try to help you guys keep in mind is that your body isn't the enemy. I've spent a lot of time thinking my body is the enemy. And like, why do I get so anxious? Why do I get so stressed out? Why am I so compulsive? But it's the messenger. And for those of you who've been listening to the podcast from the beginning, so I started the podcast in November of 2024, which is a little over a year ago. And ironically, right when I started it, I think it was like, I don't know, the first one or two shows went live, and then I fell off my horse and broke my back. And I will say that I've pretty much been in constant pain since then. I am in pain right now. I have my heating pad on, et cetera, et cetera. And what I have found, though, is that my back gets a lot worse. I've had physical therapy, I had surgery, et cetera. But I find that my pain gets a lot worse. And if you haven't listened to any of these podcasts that we've done with Viola Morone, you have to, because she talks about the chakras and all this stuff. And I'm sure it's the stress and everything that just gets my back going. And I'm trying to get a handle on it, but I'm trying to look at it as, instead of like, oh my gosh, why is I'm so sad, my back is still hurting, is that I'm just trying to sit back for a minute and tell me it's the messenger, and what is it that I need to hear. The third bucket, which can be the most difficult, it's something that I have really hard time with, which is getting out of the isolation. And when we feel defeated, sad, less than, broken, the last thing we want to do usually is to reach out and tell somebody that. But what I have found is that sometimes you just call a friend, or you just text a friend and you say, hey, I'm really struggling. Can you talk? Or yours truly, great friends that I have, I will call and they'll be like, oh, hey, Marley. And they can't hear me on the other end because I'm like, so they don't know if I've been kidnapped or if it was just an accidental dial, but oh no, it's me. I just can't talk because I'm crying. So I want to encourage you, whether it's a friend, a priest, a counselor, something online, just reach out to somebody and say, that you're not okay. And maybe this is time to reconnect with a therapist. Or I also find, if I just really don't feel like actually like having a conversation and telling somebody else what's going on, then what I'll try to do is I'll try to help somebody else, like come up with something and just be like, oh, like, even if you're just at the supermarket and you're like, oh, hey, can I, help an older person with their groceries, or can, you open the door for somebody, or, help a mom who's like struggling with the kids in the shopping basket. But this was like about a week ago, I did something so random. Now, mind you, I was still overwhelmed and busy with work and behind on deadlines, etc. But I just like couldn't get out of my head. I was stressed out and I needed to just do something different. Well, if you guys have been hearing, again, in Altadena, the famous city that we're talking about today, there's this poor guy who has this bear that's been living under his house, right? And the Fish and Wildlife, it's like, I think he's going to sue the Fish and Wildlife, because in California, you can't kill the bear. We don't want to kill the bear. We just want, the guy doesn't want the bear under his house. He's afraid. He can hear it, the whole thing. I mean, this has been going on for months and months and months. And so yours truly was like, okay, I really need to do something different. So I was like Googling and coming up with all these strategies for how this guy could get rid of the bear. And so I texted him and I said, hey, like, you can Google me to see that I'm a real person. I'm not a stalker, but I think I have some ideas that you might not have tried about solving this bear problem. So anyway, he and I had this like 30-minute conversation. I don't know if he got the bear out. I'm going to actually text him. I've been meaning to text him and check and see. I haven't seen any stories. Now, maybe the bear is flooded. Maybe he's flooded at this point, but I'm telling you, I'm hell-bent on getting this bear out of this guy's house. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because it distracted me, right? When it took me away from everything I'm going through and said, hey, like, what else can I do? Like, I needed to find some little tiny hook that would get me out of my head. And I was like, well, I've been reading about this bear story, which I find captivating, and like, why can't he get it out, and all these other things. So that put me kind of down this rabbit hole in a good way. And then I kind of started organizing it. And then I realized, and I said to him, hey, listen, if I help you get the bear out, would you be on my podcast? And I don't know that he said yes, but he's like, the media is hounding me. And I was like, okay, well, I'd like to consider myself part of the media, but not really. The idea is that I got so excited just talking to this guy that I was like texting my friends with whom I'd spoken about this bear story before. I'm like, hey, you know what? The bear guy? I'm like, I just talked to him for half an hour. Okay. I got a lot of mileage out of this really ridiculous conversation I had with him. So try to help somebody else with something, even if it doesn't work. We don't know. That bear still might be in there. He might have mauled the poor guy by now. Another thing is give a random compliment. Just even if it's to one of your kids, and just say, that was really kind what you did for your brother or sister yesterday. Or, hey, I noticed that I didn't have to wake you up, or you didn't seem quite as grumpy, Coco, this morning when you went to school, that kind of thing. And the key takeaway here is that isolation really makes the pain lie to you. Isolation just makes it all seem a lot worse. And then we start catastrophizing, etc. So really consider that. Now, my bucket 4 is about getting re-anchored. And this kind of stuff is going to be controversial. Some of you are just going to like not listen from this point. That's okay. But whatever you believe in, whether it's higher power, whether it's like source, God, angels, I don't know. To me, I believe in God. And I have found that when it's the most challenging, that is the best thing I can do, is try to get like reconnect with God. Now, you can substitute the word God for source or grounding, whatever resonates with you. But there's a great app out there called Hallow, and it's by one of the Wahlberg brothers, the Mark Wahlberg, I think. Anyway, I don't know that it's like Catholic or anything, but it has been really amazing for me. There's another app, a rosary app, that when things get really bad, I just will play my rosary and say my rosary over and over and over again. The first thing I do every single morning is open up a book called Jesus Calling. They have an app also, and I don't think it's a particular religion either, but it's so great because every day has like a message. So you open it up and, you read the Jesus Calling, and it just kind of meets you where you are. And to me, it helps set the day. It just kind of reminds me like, it's all going to be okay. Now, another thing I do is 5 affirmations a day. And Louise Hay is from Hay House. I think she's amazing as part of this. Like, I go back and I listen to, like, on YouTube, or I download audiobooks like on Audible, like Louise Hay, or um, Abraham, and the Teachings of Abraham. I think it's Esther and Abraham, Esther Hicks. Or I will listen to, as I say, Dr. Wayne Dyer's another great one. Anthony Robbins. That's like one of my really old go-tos. I love Anthony Robbins. It's hard to be in a bad mood when you're listening to Anthony Robbins tell you how he was homeless and like, just get your act together. So go back and listen to something that's just going to at least move the needle a little bit. Anyway, going back to the affirmations, you can Google some good affirmations, or just Google, Louise Hay House, and find out what are some affirmations. And I do think there is something to saying these affirmations over and over and over. You do start believing them. I know a lot of people say, well, it's not true, or it's not, whatever. At this point, like, if you're desperate, you need something to move the needle. So I think affirmations are a great thing to do. And they're even something easy you can do when you're driving or spinning or freaking out. Don't forget the basics of a vision board. I am famous for my magazines and all my magazine cutouts, etc. I like paper. I like to tear it out. I like the sound of tearing it out. I like organizing them and creating my vision boards. I literally have a giant vision board, or like what I'm kind of working on or what motivates me in my office. And then I also have one that's like in a book almost, that I'll just glue things. And it's funny because I like Gwyneth Paltrow. We did an event for Gwyneth Paltrow years ago, and she actually was in one of my goal setting books. It was like kind of a goal setting vision board thing. And I freaked out. I was like, that is so weird when something you manifest like actually shows up. So vision board, even if it's just like opening a Pinterest account or something and creating a board and just putting photos in there or images of things that you like or that make you happy. It's true, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Another thing I do is a victory log. So when I'm feeling really challenged, sometimes I will just start to write in my journal or even on a piece of paper all the things that I did do. So I might just put, got my makeup on today, taped a podcast, read Jesus Calling, and, scrubbed my teeth. Whatever it is, like gave somebody a compliment, texted a friend, followed up on, an email I was supposed to do. Because I find that it gives you a little bit of wind under your wings. And then you have like some momentum, because an object in motion stays in motion. But it's like when you're sad or depressed or just not feeling it or unmotivated, at the very least, the hardest thing is just to get the impetus to get something done. And you can also act as if. Sometimes I just like try to smile and be like, yes, everything is great. Yes, everything is absolutely great. Now, Louise Hay does this. I think it's kind of crazy, but I actually am starting to think it works, where you do these mirror exercises where you have to like look in the mirror, and I'm not going to do it justice. So Google Louise Hay and the mirror exercises. Cheryl Richardson is another great one with this. And you have to like talk to yourself in the mirror so that you really like yourself. And what's kind of funny is that she talks all about how difficult this is. And I got to tell you, I don't mind talking to myself in the mirror. That's the one strange thing, is that I'm like good talking to myself in the mirror. And sometimes that's just acting as if, though. So I have talked to the mirror when I was in tears recently and didn't feel it, but I kind of came back and I just thought, at the very least, I can laugh, because I am crying and talking to myself in a mirror because a dead woman, bless her, Louise Hay, I listened to an old YouTube thing, which is probably done on AI, etc. So my note on this is, faith does not remove the storm, but it just kind of reminds you who you are inside it. And it's a good place to start. Now, I wouldn't be me if I didn't tell you also what I, quote, really do. Sometimes I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say out loud. I don't want to write. I don't want to write in my journal. I don't want to do anything practical. I'm like a 3-year-old, right? Who just wants to have a tantrum. And so sometimes I just type it, and I just really type it into ChatGPT. And what I find is I'll be like, and then like my kids make fun of me because they said I talk to ChatGPT like it's a person. But what I find is that I start to vent. It gets it off my chest. It's an easy way to almost kind of start journaling, and it gives me an outlet. And then I sort of sort through what's really going on. Am I tired? Is the sky really falling? Et cetera, et cetera. And so I want you, at the very least, whether it's ChatGPT or your favorite AI of choice, sometimes just ask ChatGPT what to do and say, you are in the proverbial SH, So think of it as part therapy, but sometimes it just helps me not to be alone in my own head, especially if I feel like, oh my gosh, I can't call one of my friends and just cry one more time. This is a very random podcast, very raw. I have to tell you, it took me a long time this morning just to start taping, which never, ever happens, because full disclosure, I was in tears. I was like, I'm trying to do this podcast about hope. I started out with kind of like great intentions. And then I just got all in my head and I was in tears and like, should I reveal any of these things that my back is still bugging me and I'm challenged? And then I thought, you know what, why not? It is called Every Day is a Train Wreck. And I wanted to just share a little bit about what's going on with me and encourage you, in case you are in a similar boat or know somebody who's in a similar boat and you just don't know what to do or how to help them, maybe just forward them this podcast. Maybe it'll help. So if you take nothing else from this episode, please realize, and this is ironic coming from the girl who loves her goals and her 5-year plans and everything else, is that right now you don't need a 5-year plan. Okay. You need one small action that says, I'm still here and like, I'm still in the game. And one of my great friends, Francie, her grandson was on, Sebastian was on, we did a whole segment on his app, and she has some great wisdom that she's given me over and over. And she says, when it really goes south, she says to God, I can't, you can, please do. I can't, you can, please do. And I have been using that one a lot. So if today all you do is breathe, drink water, get through this hour or however long it's been, that counts for something. And just take one thing that I said, just one, and consider it. Even if that one thing is just passing it on to a friend because you're like, I don't know what this girl's talking about. I am like white hot right now. So if you haven't already, this is Every Day is a Train Wreck. I'm your host, Marley Major. You can follow us on YouTube. Speaking of Victory Log, I got a notification that Christmas came early. Mid-December, we got our 2 millionth view, which is mind-blowing. So our audience is starting to grow. You guys are sharing the podcast. You are sharing it on YouTube. I can't thank you enough. I'm so grateful for the motivation and the enthusiasm to still keep showing up for you guys every week. So please subscribe if you haven't. Please comment, share, tell a friend, follow us on Instagram at The Party Goddess. And yeah, that's it. But I'm right here with you in the mix, in the soup. I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Be safe.